Today I'm going to walk you through how to make a 7-strand magic mystery braid bracelet using a scrap of leather and your Cricut machine. Here's a list of everything you'll need. You'll find useful links in the description, including one for the bracelet SVG cut file, which you can download for free. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. The first step is to download the free file. There's a link in the description to this page here, and you can just click free download, and the file will download as a compressed zip file to wherever you have it set to download. Find the file you've just downloaded and go ahead and unzip it. You'll get a folder here with 5 files in it, and these are different formats of the same file, so you'll want to find the one that has the .svg at the end. This is the SVG cut file, which is the one that we're going to be importing into Cricut Design Space for this project. If you're using a laser cutter, either the SVG or DXF files will work. The next step is to open the cut file in Cricut Design Space. To do this, open a new project in Design Space and click on the Upload button in the left panel here. Click Upload Image and you'll get this drag and drop space, and go ahead and open the folder with the SVG file and drag the file into the box. Click Upload to import the file. You can scroll down to your recent uploads and select the file and then click Add to Canvas. You'll see the file on your canvas now, and now we need to resize it to fit your wrist. To figure out your wrist size, see the link to the instructions in the description. I made mine 6.75 inches here. My wrist size is actually 6 inches, but I left extra room because braiding shortens the length a bit, and I also like a looser fit. Now we're going to get everything ready for cutting. For leather projects, I use a strong grip mat, and I also like to use strong grip transfer tape to minimize the mess on my mat, because leather fibers can get everywhere. You'll most likely end up cutting through the transfer tape, but I found that using it still makes less of a mess than not using it. So place the transfer tape onto the mat with the sticky side up. I like to secure it with a brayer and then peel off the backing so the sticky side is exposed. This is the scrap of leather I used for my bracelet, and I cut it to just the size I needed. This leather is about 0.05 inches thick, and I've already tested it to find the right cut settings, and I've added them to my custom settings. It is best to find the right cut settings for your leather before you start. If you're not sure how, see the description for a link to a tutorial. So place the fuzzy side of the leather down and be sure to secure the leather to the mat. You can also use painter's tape for this for extra security. Now it's time to set up the design file for the actual cut. So to do this, go back to Cricut Design Space and select Make It. Position the design to the right place on the mat and then click Continue to open the Cut Options page. Now from here, you'll select your custom cut settings for the leather that you're using. I've included mine on the screen here in case it's useful. And now we're ready to cut. Okay, so now we're going to start the cut. Load your mat into your Cricut and press the flashing Load Unload Mat button. And then when the Cricut is ready, press the flashing Go button. And now we can just let the machine do its thing. I recommend using a deep point blade for this project. And I've also found that using a dull blade can ruin the cut. So make sure your blade is sharp. You can also use a laser cutter for this, and because the design is pretty simple, you could even cut it by hand if you wanted. And here we've got a nice clean cut. Now you can remove your bracelet from the mat and clean it up a bit. I'm using a crafting spatula here to lift the edges off the mat, but you can use any tool that works for you. Carefully peel the bracelet off the mat, and here you can see that the blade cut through the transfer tape, but the mat underneath stayed pretty clean. The spatula is also helpful in removing the transfer tape from the back, which is what I'm doing here. With some designs, it can be really tedious to remove the transfer tape when the cuts are really intricate, but this one's pretty easy because the cut is really simple. So you'll want to peel the tape off slowly so that you don't damage your leather. And with a little bit of struggle here, I have removed the transfer tape from the back. And the last thing now is just to remove the excess leather from the holes. I'm using a tweezer for this, and once that's done, now we've got our bracelet. It's time to seal the back of the leather to reduce shedding of the fuzzy fibers in the next step. This is optional, but it adds a little bit of a professional touch. Start by laying the bracelet flat with the fuzzy side facing up on a piece of cardstock or a mat. The sealant I'm using here is called Fiebing's Leather Sheen, and it protects the leather and keeps the fibers in place. I found that a couple of coats works really well to seal any fibers and also dyes. So take a clean rag and apply some sheen to it, and then start at one end and gently dab the sheen into the fibers. Try not to rub to avoid ripping the fibers off. You'll see the leather darken a bit as it gets wet, which helps you see how much you've actually applied. So try and use a good amount and an even coat all over the entire back. And when you're done, you'll want to let it dry for 8 hours. You can apply a second coat for extra protection. Just make sure that you let it dry between coats and also before the next step, which is adding the snaps. Now, to close the bracelet, we're going to add a snap closure, so you'll need some snaps and installation tools. I got myself this kit here, and these usually include everything you need to install the snaps, except for a hammer, which you're also going to need. And I have found that a size of 12.5 millimeters works well for this type of bracelet. I also like to use a wooden block to work on to protect my surfaces. You'll find a link to this kit in the description, but there are a lot of options out there. The first thing you might need to do is to enlarge the holes, which in my case are too small for the snaps that I have chosen. So I'm using the hole punch that came with my kit. And so I just center it over one of the two holes and give it a few whacks with the hammer until it goes all the way through the leather. And then once I'm done, I'm checking that it has cut cleanly, and then I repeat this for the second hole so that both sides are the right size for the snaps that I have. Next, I'm going to position the button and socket on one side of the bracelet. This base came with the kit, and I placed it concave side up, and this will protect the button from damage when I use the hammer on it. Place the bracelet flat with the fuzzy side facing up, and then feed the button up through the hole, and then place the socket on top of it on the other side of the leather. And then rest all of this on the base, holding everything in place. And now I'll secure the pieces in place using the hammer. So I'm inserting the pointed installation tool, which is a tool that came with the kit, into the center of the socket until it feels secure. And now I'm giving it a few whacks with the hammer. It's worth practicing a few times to get a feel for these to see how much pressure you need to apply. Make sure to check that everything is secure. If anything's rattling around, give it a few more hits with the hammer until nothing is moving. So now I'm going to do the other side, and I'll start by positioning the eyelet and the stud. Start by inserting the eyelet down through the hole on the fleshy side of the leather so that it's flush with this side. Next, place the stud on top of the eyelet on the other side of the leather, just like I'm doing here. I like to check the positioning of everything because I've learned from experience that this is easy to mess up if you're not paying attention. And now flip over the base so the convex side faces up and align the center of the base with the hole in the center of the flat part of the eyelet and hold everything in place just like this. And now I'll secure everything using the hammer. Hold the concave installation tool over the stud and give it a few hits with the hammer. Again, you'll get a feel for how much pressure you need with a few practice runs. And now check that everything's secure and your snaps are done. You can wear the bracelet this way, but if you want the braided version, keep watching. For the braiding step, let's go over a few quick things to know before we start. You'll see different terms used in different tutorials, but for the purposes of this one, I will be referring to 7 folds as a set. After each set, we'll need to fold the bottom up through the gap, and you'll see what I mean. And we'll need to have an even number of sets, and the more sets we have, the tighter the braid will be. I'm going to go for 4 sets for this bracelet. Okay, let's get started. Start by folding the outer strand on one side into the middle, and then hold it in place with your thumb. And then fold the outer strand on the opposite side into the middle and hold it in place again. Now, you'll repeat this until you've done all 7 strands once. Every time you fold an outer strand in, another strand will become an outer strand. So take your time and go slow and adjust the strands as you fold to keep everything flat and as neat as possible. As you fold, the bottom will get twisted and tangled, but don't worry about this for now. When you've folded over all 7 strands once, it's time to fold the bottom of the bracelet up. To do this, first create a gap between the strands like I'm doing here. I'm separating the strands on either side based on their natural direction. So you'll have 3 strands on one side and 4 on the other. Once you've created a nice gap for yourself, take the bottom of the bracelet and fold it upwards into the gap. At first, this will look like it only made a bigger mess at the bottom, but as we keep going, you'll see that this allows us to eventually untangle the bottom. So now I'm starting the second set. I'm just going to keep repeating what I did for the first set, alternating folding the outer strands into the middle and holding them in place. Finishing this next set of 7 will complete 1 cycle, and you'll see that the next time we fold the bottom up, it cleans up all the strands at the bottom. This is why we want to complete an even number of sets. After every second set, folding the bottom up will untangle all the strands below. So that's the end of the second set, and now I'm going to create a gap and fold the bottom up through it to straighten out all the bottom strands. And now I'll just complete the last 2 sets. You'll see that I'm braiding as tightly as I can. This is to make sure I have enough room to do the last fold up through the gap at the very end of the 4th set. You can see it's getting pretty cramped. So again, the tighter I can keep things, the easier that last fold is going to be. And here we are at the very last fold up through the gap, and I've given myself enough room to get it through. And that's the end of braiding. Now we just need to make some adjustments. So in this last step, we just want to adjust the strands to evenly spread out the braid so that everything looks symmetrical. To do this, just flip the bracelet so the bottom part of the braid is at the top and then loosen the strands downward. Flip it again and repeat this process until everything looks nice and even. Also straighten out and flatten any strands that have twisted so that all strands are laying as flat as possible. Keep making adjustments until you're happy with how it looks. And just a few final touches here to finish it off. And that's it, we're all done. Here's the final bracelet and it's ready to wear. I hope you like this project. If you're interested in other similar projects, feel free to like and subscribe so that I know to make more like it and you know when a new one comes out. And that's all for now.